John Thornell is currently Vice President of the Bristol Sporting Club. But 50 years ago, he was just one of a number of Bristol businessmen who got together to help raise money for local amateur boxing by holding dinner shows in the city. They probably didn't realise just what they were starting, but half a century after that initial meeting, the club is still thriving and raising vital funds to keep the sport alive.
The first meeting was held at Hickey's Club, David Dow's Hickey's Club, which meant that we had a good venue with no costs. David said we could use the place completely, so all funds raised would help amateur boxing.
So just to be clear, the group of businessmen who formed the Bristol Sporting Club, they were all amateur boxing fans, were they?
Yes, they were fans of amateur boxing, because amateur boxing in those days were held in every school in Bristol as a boxing team. And it was an ideal thing if you could possibly get into the Bristol team that boxed London or other cities all over the country.
So nowadays, the Bristol Sporting Club supports the Western Counties. Was it specifically Bristol boxers that it helped in the early days?
Originally, it was going to be, but then decided no, it would be wrong because Mr. Mills explained that the ABA covered the whole of the West Country.
And of course, Lem Mills himself came from Frome in Somerset.
He did, and he lived in Frome, and he lived there pretty well all his life.
So having had the first meeting and the first show, how quickly did it develop into quite a few shows every year?
Well, by the time the second show came up, which was 3 months after the first one, we were so overcrowded with orders and people, we had to turn people away. And it was absolutely sad to do this. So they decided then they'd form a full committee. We were completely called the Bristol Sporting Club. We had our own shield made, which we have on show at all our functions. And from there, we moved to the Grand Hotel.
So apart from having local businessmen involved, you got into the habit, the tradition of having a sporting guest.
Correct.
For every show. And
yes.
the programme for this coming season will list those names. But can we just go through some of those early ones? Because I know, for instance, looking through the photos, Bobby Charlton was there.
We did.
There were lots of local celebrities, and there was also royalty, effectively.
Well, back in the middle 70s, we had the honour of having Lord Louis Mountbatten there when the Royal Navy who were attending our boxing show, and at that time, I'm pretty certain he was the first Sea Lord. And every person, every sportsman of all sports mentioned in our programmes through all the years we've been going are shown there. Everyone gave their time free of charge.
So, for instance, Freddie Truman, I know you've got a picture of him in one of the programmes you've got.
There was Freddie Truman, he was a character, always outspoken in his cricket days. Yeah. Came from Yorkshire and was Yorkshire through and through.
I mentioned Bobby Charlton, and I think at the same occasion there was John Pullin was sitting just on the same table.
We did. John Pullin,
Bristol
Bristol in England, hooker, a farmer, and he went on. Well, I played for England many times in one of the top star players and local players. He loved to come along, and then of course we had Alan Morley, who scored more tries for Bristol than any other player, still, I believe, in history.
The world record,
He holds the world record for that.
Mm. And I know one of the other traditions that is still going to this day is celebrating the successes of Bristol sports teams. And there's a very old picture of Bristol City when they won promotion to the First Division, all proudly sitting at the table at a Bristol Sporting Club function.
We did, and when our committees were formed originally at the beginning, Harry Dorman was our first president, and the Duke of Beaufort was our vice president. And when Bristol City gained promotion to the First Division, we had the whole team there that night. Well, it was a wonderful occasion.
And Alan Dix was there with all his players and all celebrating. And I know, bring it right up to date.
And then right up
this
to date,
50th year, you're recognising City, Rovers and Bristol Rugby's success.
This year, because of all three teams getting promotion, we're having representatives of Bristol City, Bristol Rugby and Bristol Rovers to receive their blue plates in recognition of the teams doing it.
And just to take it from the early days to the future, you said the Bristol Sporting Club was set up because amateur boxing was struggling for money.
Yes.
Sadly, that's still the case now, and if it wasn't for the Bristol Sporting Club and donations to certain clubs, maybe amateur boxing wouldn't be in the comparatively healthy state in terms of boxing success that it is at the moment.
It is. In fact, every penny we raise goes back to amateur boxing. We've now got something like 80 odd clubs in the West Country. We've got, I think, it's 7 in Bristol now. All the Bristol clubs we help. The poorer clubs, we pay for the medicals for the boys to have their medicals before they're allowed to do amateur boxing, to make sure they're fully fit and don't suffer any problems. We also recently donated a coach to Barton Hill, albeit a second-hand one, but their coach blew up, and we managed to buy another one to make it available for them to be able to use.
It's hard to imagine just how much money has been raised over the 50 years, but it's into the hundreds of thousands, isn't it?
It is. I would think it was coming up now the best part of at least $1 million.